Okay, so let's call this meeting to order, and since we have a flag in the room, we can pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Great. Good evening, everyone. This is the December 21st, 2021 4:45 meeting of the Fairfield Harbor Management Commission. A little late in announcing that, I apologize. The first order of business this evening is to approve the minutes from the October 2021 meeting. They were distributed to everyone. I don't expect the new commissioners to participate since they weren't here. So can I have a motion to approve the minutes as...
Do we have commissioners on the phone?
Eric's on the phone.
Hi.
And maybe Sam by now.
Okay, I'll make the motion.
Jack has moved to approve the October minutes. Can I have a second?
I'll second it.
Thanks, Eric. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, October approved.
You may want to just note on the phone code for FOIA. It was Sam. Is that you? One commissioner on the phone? Just Eric.
Just Eric.
Just Eric.
Yeah,
Just Eric.
It's Eric. How are you, Brian?
I'm good, thanks, Eric.
So we have only two that can make the motion and vote.
I don't know if there was another one on the phone. Just
yeah. No, Eric is there.
I think we're still waiting for Sam to come on.
Yes, we expect Sam to...
Yeah, but Eric, you and I have to do this because the other commissioners weren't in the meeting.
Right.
Okay, so we have November.
I'd like to make the motion.
Jack moves. November minutes, Eric?
Oh, I'll second it.
Thank you very much. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great. Approved. Okay. So let's move on to the fun part of this. We have new commissioners with us this evening. And why don't we just go around the table? For those of you on the phone, a little difficult because you can't see faces, but we have portable mics down at the far end of the table, which is where our new commissioners are sitting, so that if you can't hear them, please let us know, because we want everybody to at least be able to hear who this group is if we can't actually see each other. I'll go first. I'm Kim Taylor. I'm the chair. I've been on the commission for just about 6 years now. Very interesting work here. And I'm a sailor out of Pequot and have thoroughly enjoyed the 6 years so far that I've spent.
And I'm Brian LeClaire. I lived in Fairfield about 40 years, give or take. And I'm the new harbor master as of middle of October of this year. And I'm a sailor as well.
Hi, I'm Don Hyman, and I've lived in Fairfield since 1980, but I was on the water in Fairfield much before then for a longer period of time. And I'm delighted to be on the commission with you.
Yeah, and I'm Bill Perugini. I'm a 20-year resident of the Fairfield Beach area, a longtime mariner, member of the United States Coast Guard Auxiliary, flotilla officer at South Benson Marina, and part of the leadership of two neighborhood organizations that are really adjacent to the area that we overlook, the Fairfield Beach Residents Association and also the Pine Creek Association.
Great.
Very pleased to be here.
Great. Mr. Bishop, we don't know you, so...
I don't. Tim Bishop, currently the newest conservation director as of August. I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me. One of the many commission meetings I attend in my daily agenda. But yeah, thank you for having me, and look forward to working with you on projects and everything else.
Great.
I'm Jack Hirschler. I started as an alternate commissioner and then a full commissioner, and currently I'm chairing the mooring committee of the commission, and I'm a sailor.
I'm Jeff Stedman. I'm a planning consultant, and I've been the commission's staff since 1990, interestingly, and that's when we started working on the harbor management plan. And I think one of our needs now is, as the people who were involved in the drafting of the original plan and dealing with the issues that affected Southport Harbor then are now few among us. And the importance of preserving the historical record and the knowledge of what's been accomplished in the past so that we don't repeat the mistakes of the past and do all the positive things we have in mind for the future.
Eric, Sam, Doug, want to introduce yourselves?
Sure, I'll go. This is Eric Sunman. I've been serving on the Harbor Management Commission since 2019. Before that, I was on the RTM, serving District 10 and District 1 for over a decade. And we sail out of Pequot Yacht Club in Southport, and I live down at Pine Creek Beach. And welcome to the new commissioners.
Thank you.
Sam, are you there yet? How about Doug Metchik? Okay. Well, when they join...
I might just say something, maybe you were planning to do this, but we also might want to recognize that, Harry and Mark and Ted, as former commission members, contributed a great deal to the Harbor Commission and the different projects, and somehow maybe the public record of the meeting should express support or recognition of their service.
Certainly. As much as we're excited to have new members on board and look forward to what I'm sure will be significant contributions, Harry, French, Mark Foster, Ted Schwartzman spent lots of time and many hours getting us to where we are, and certainly I've invited them to come back to participate as members of the public, but certainly their service has been most appreciated, and we will miss them. And Betty, you want to introduce yourself?
I'm happy to. I am Betty Gabriel. I have been taking the minutes of the Harbor Commission for many years, and I look forward to working with the new commissioners as well.
Great, thank you.
I guess Pat Carroll, our Harbor Master Emeritus, I believe.
Pat Carroll, are you with us this evening? Pat is the...
You may not know how to unmute the phone or
it's not muted, so he should be able to. Well, Pat Carroll is the first Harbor Master, correct?
I'm here,
Madam
Madam Chairman.
Would you like to introduce yourself to the new commissioners?
I am just happy after serving as a member of the commission, chairman, harbor master. I guess it goes back over the last 25 years. It's just a pleasure to be able to participate in these meetings, and I'm most grateful. Wish you all a Merry Christmas and welcome to the commission.
Thank you.
Super. Thanks, Pat.
You're welcome, Madam Chairman.
Okay, so our first item of business this evening is my report. On November 24th, I sent the budget message to Betty. Sent the budget message. She sent it. I sent it to her, and she sent it to the finance department. I've distributed it to the commissioners because I thought it was important, especially for new folks, to see sort of generally where our money comes from. In terms of the budget request of the town, we've also submitted that. It's a no increase budget for the last 2 years, and that request will be, there will be consultation with the first selectwoman, the Board of Finance, and the RTM. That money, the town's money, goes primarily to pay for professional services for Jeff, the harbor master, Betty, the mailing that we do for the stickers. The other accounts that we have, as outlined in the budget message, the funding sources are noted. And certainly if you have any questions as we go through this budget period, or at any point along the way, please ask them. But so everybody should have the budget message to take a look at.
Where's that located?
I put that on was attached to your agenda. It's, Betty embed the agenda, the material in the agenda. No, it's right there when you see, look at the agenda, the first page. It's the,
Yeah, I see in the back there's a PDF, which I.
Yeah.
Click on it
Yeah.
to get it to.
I have a couple copies right here, if you'd like to take a look at it.
Yeah, I didn't open that.
Okay.
Thank you for.
Sure.
I will in the future.
Okay. On December 1st, the commission received from RACE the pre-submission and consultation form in connection with plans for a pier and platform at Saskville Hill Road, which is Kenzie Point. We will talk more about that later. Devin Santa is here to fill us in on and chat with us about those plans, answer our questions. And on December 3rd, the commission was copied on the email which transmitted from Deep to Aquarium, which transmitted the water diversion permit to southwestern for 25 years, 7.5 million gallons a day. And we will discuss that also a little later on in the meeting. Jeff has a copy of the agreement itself, which at the time that we put out the agenda was not available. Just as an aside, I was walking on Duck Farm Road 3 days ago, and ran into the U.S. government trucks who were setting up and reactivating the stream flow gauge on the Mill River there at Duck Farm Road. And according to the scientist who was doing it, anyone should be able to monitor that by Googling, she said, Googling USGS Mill River near Fairfield, Connecticut. And apparently, she thought it would be live today. So very, very interesting development as we go along.
We use the acronym DEEP. We might need to explain what that is.
The DEEP is the Connecticut Department of Energy and Environmental Protection. And they are our ally. Ally, is that the correct word?
Your boss.
Yeah.
We are co-regulators,
The state agency.
our overlords.
The state agency that.
The agency that we report
Management
to.
of the harbor.
Okay. All right. So that's it for my report this evening. Any questions? Okay. Devin Santa is here with us, and commissioners. Again, the PDF for the plans for the dock and platform, Betty embedded in the agenda, so you all should have it. If you are going online, I happen to have a couple copies right here. If you want to take a look, it includes pictures and the plans.
We should take a look.
Should we share it?
These are, that's, yeah.
It's the whole copy with, it's exactly what Devin and Ray submitted to us, in addition to the 2012 letter that the commission sent to DEEP from a prior request to build a dock at that location. So it's the commission's letter to DEEP, and it's DEEP's letter to the owner of the property then, and we have, in addition...
I have these other photographs that I could pass around.
We have photographs of the Kenzie Point area that Jeff took. So.
There's 3 photos together, and they progressively focus in on the site of it.
And those 3 photos are included in the package that was embedded.
There were 3 together
in the agenda.
each.
Right. Okay, so in the agenda we had the proposal from RACE, which also included a couple of pictures. We had the letter from from January 2012, and we had the letter from Deep to the prior owner. Jeff?
Mike, just for the benefit of the new members, the owner of the property is applying for a permit from Deep. And as part of this coastal regulatory program, before the application can be submitted to Deep, it has to be reviewed by the Harbor Management Commission to determine how it relates to the town's harbor management plan or any other comments that the commission might have. So this is an example of part of the responsibility of the commission. This is one example having to do with a Deep permit. There are others too, but so the commission's role now is to hear the applicant's proposal and then provide comments to Deep, which will then enable the applicant to submit the application to Deep, and then it goes through a review and we could comment on it again. But that's sort of a introduction to.
Thank you. That's because that area is part of the Mackenzie Point is adjacent to the outer harbor area.
Yes, it adjoins the designated Southport Harbor Management Area. In this case, it's the outer harbor. Not.
In the diagram, where I was just looking to see if I could find it, where's the point at the edge of the harbor management area in Mackenzie Point? It goes to the red 22 buoy, I think. On landward. We're in our jurisdiction. I'm just trying to.
Oh, yes.
Yes, because it goes in there, right?
I should have brought that.
I didn't find it.
Updated map.
Is that one of the big ones behind you, maybe?
No. It's the jurisdictional map that I.
Okay, didn't find it quickly.
It's in the plan, right?
Yeah.
It's in the plan. The jurisdictional map we're saying for those on the phone, is in the plan.
This is a crude map.
On page
2-15.
On page 2-15 of the plan.
Right, so it touches Kenzie Point and then proceeds southeast out to the red 22. In a curving pattern, it looks like. This is accurate.
Yep. Thanks.
So the property is just at the very edge of the harbor management area.
Well, we're updating these maps, the old plan, but the boundaries haven't changed.
And if I may ask, how is that defined? Is there a rationale for that delineation of the outer harbor?
Mm-hmm. It goes back to the town code that established the Harbor Management Commission in the 1980s. And how that would, it's a good question. Who came up with that jurisdiction initially? And it was because the purpose of the Harbor Management Commission, without getting into a whole lot of stuff back then, was to deal with conflicts having to do with the use of the federal channel in Anchorage and Southport Harbor. So it was specific to Southport Harbor, not to the rest of Fairfield. But how they determined that line of the outer harbor, who actually drew it to put that jurisdiction in the town code, I don't know. Maybe I'll try to find that out.
Yeah, I mean, interesting, because it's an interesting sort of delineation, like
maybe
southeast.
Yeah.
Perhaps because that's the... Yeah.
Looking for some sort of landmark to draw a line to, maybe, to circle it around on the Southport, but...
Thank you.
Gotta find that out.
That's a good
Somebody
question.
did.
Right, somebody did, but why is the question, right? So and it's my understanding that this pre-application, this pre-submission consultation form is required by DEEP, right?
Yes.
So, Devin?
Yes.
Do you want to chat with us about?
I'd be happy to chat with you, and thank you for the opportunity.
Great. We've got this microphone right here. Why don't we put it right at the end of the table?
Want me to come sit down?
Yeah, well, that would be good too. Come and sit down.
All right, then whatever you most prefer. Thanks, Madam Chair. Thanks, Commissioners. With your permission, I can go through the project?
Please.
Okay. As you know and have described, the site is on Kinsey Point, on the west side of Kinsey Point, at the end of Sasko Hill Road. The site address is 1143 through 1155 Sasko Hill Road. As noted, we're in front of you for pre-application sign-off for its consistency or inconsistency with your harbor management plan, as is required for submission D for structures, dredge, and fill application. The proposed structure is a steel frame pier that would extend approximately 95 feet from a brick structure that's down on the waterfront. Anyone that's been out boating back and forth probably knows the structure is kind of a landmark as you come in and out. It would extend off of that structure and out into the water. The site, we are aware of its exposure and the wave energies that the structure would see. That factored into the design in terms of its structure being designed out of steel in lieu of timber, and not incorporating a floating dock, incorporating a lower platform. This type of design has been used by my company in other sites, including on Beachside Avenue, so very similar type of exposure, as well as Lone Neck Point and Darien. Those structures have survived Irene and Sandy with no ill effect, and this would be designed with the same rigorous analysis for the exposure that it's. That said, it's somewhat limited of use. It's a shallow water depth there, so it wouldn't be anticipated to be any full-time berthing. It would be high water tenders or smaller boats can come in and tie up temporarily, but there is only about a foot and a half of water at the platform at low tide. It would also have a small davit for raising and lowering kayaks or paddle boards or similar paddlecraft. So not bringing in any sizable vessels there, but more just providing an access point to the waterfront. So with that, I'll open it to any questions.
The one question I had was about whether there would be any impact at all for the dinghy sailors that sail around that area. I just don't have a good sense of how far to the east that people and those little children and their little ideals in the summertime might get to that. And would this be something that presents any kind of a change to the kids who are learning to sail in terms of where they can
It's
get?
not really extending out that far from shore. It's about 94, 95 feet offshore.
Yeah.
It's only 40 feet beyond mean low water, and it's only in about 18 inches of water.
Right.
The other thing of note, there's an existing kind of derelict groin and timber structures out there. So if you've ever been around there, you really would be up on the beach to even consider getting towards that. So in my opinion, founded on some amount of sailing out of there and being a licensed captain, I don't think it would cause any impact for navigation.
I can also respond. The official area for community sailing of Fairfield, which has ideal 18s and which I'm a member of, does not extend that far west. It stops at the beginning of the beach, at the westerly end of the beach where the breakwater comes out.
Right.
You shouldn't be any further eastward than that.
Yeah.
The ideals do the same thing. Do they tend to?
Yeah, and the ideals draw about 3 feet of water anyway. Yeah, 3 and change, so they'd be in trouble if they were.
Yeah,
right. We would never.
I couldn't think of any other conflict with
kayakers. Right.
I think the other graphics, if you looked at sheet 5 of our drawing set, sheet 6, you'll see there's the remnants of the timber structure in the stone that's at the terminus. And that kind of gives you a spatial reference how far offshore that is. And if you look at our structure relative to that, it's really not sticking any further offshore other than a current structure.
Just one thing to point out, I'm a past president of Aspetuck Land Trust, and I just conferred with our executive director that the land trust has a 12-acre easement on the shoreline adjacent to the Samuelson property.
I believe it to be north of this location. I know of its existence, but I do not believe it's at this structure.
Very good.
I think that might be something though we want to see on the map to know that where it is. And we looked at this in 2012. we all, with the previous application for this area, I think that one of our conditions was that the applicant would provide a letter saying that the Aspetuck Land Trust had no objection to the project. And I don't know if that was ever provided back then, but that was one of the conditions that we raised.
I can ask David, the executive director.
I think it's something we would want to have, is not just hearsay, but something in writing. Yeah.
So how many people would be using this dock? How many residences?
There is some subdivision out there, but this is gonna be attached to a single one of the subdivided properties. So one property.
So it's for one property?
Correct.
So it's theoretically then other properties, when it's subdivided, would have waterfront access as well and would be expected to have their own docks, or how?
I don't know what the subdivision map looks like, and I know there is some waterfront that is subject to Aspetuck's easement, so I don't know that definitively.
And then there was also there's reference in your application to a permit number, Devin. But I think that's a certificate of permit. We couldn't find a previous permit that was issued for here in 2012, but there was a certificate of permission that was issued.
Perhaps it was a certificate of permission. It had to do with modifications to the shorefront.
Yes. It was shore protection stuff.
And within that permit, there was also authorization for some removal of the derelict timber as well as some derelict concrete. So the state pretty much obligated this owner to pick up the pieces that were authorized from the past permit.
But it was a permit rather than a certificate? Because we couldn't, we couldn't find a permit. They sent us what they had. They didn't have
they sent it to us.
Well, if you could share that with us then.
Sure.
I'm in text communication with David Brandt, who's the executive director of the Aspetuck Land Trust, and he says that they have not yet been asked about the dock, and they're not familiar with it, so they haven't written any such letter. Not to say that they wouldn't, but I think this is the first he's hearing of it from me right now.
Again, we don't believe that this impacts the land trust easement in any way, shape, or form, so it wouldn't be something that would have.
Devin, these applicants have no expectation of a town mooring being provided in the harbor management area, and they understand that no privately owned moorings would be permitted either under our rules in the harbor management area, so they can't use this dock to access a mooring location in the harbor management area. They understand that?
I don't know, I can't speak definitively to their understanding.
I mean, that's pretty clear in our rules, that there's not going to be a town, all moorings have to be owned by, the tackle has to be owned by the town, and the town's not gonna place any moorings in the outer harbor, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
So again, I don't know, that hasn't been a conversation that we've had.
Right, well, you explained that they could use this for light craft, like a kayak, but if there's an expectation that this is gonna be for a means of getting to a mooring, it's not going to be under our rules, it's going to be in the harbor management area.
Could they apply?
I everybody agree. I mean,
Yeah,
that, again, it hadn't been discussed.
I just want to be sure there's not sort of doing this with an expectation of a town mooring being like that.
I'm not aware.
Right, okay.
And then also, Devin, I'm assuming you submitted a pre-application consultation form to the Shellfish Commission?
Correct.
Has the commission looked at that yet, Tim, the Shellfish Commission?
No, not yet. Not that I know.
I think I heard you say something about just as a courtesy advising the land trust of what the plan is. Has that been done? Could that be done?
I think that would be one of previously, so it was 9 years ago, we looked at a proposal, not a dock, but to work on the bulkhead and do other stuff. And that's when we learned of the conservation, it was called a conservation restriction, I think, or whatever. It's the same thing, I guess. And it was our recommendation then, and our condition, that before it went forward, the applicant needed to provide a written statement from the Aspetuck Land Trust that the land trust was okay with what was being proposed back then. And I think that that's something that we should ask for now. But also, I think that it should be shown on the drawing, this particular drawing, so we know definitively where it is. And it may have nothing to do with this.
One thing I'll say is that I believe the last project had a lot of waterfront regrading, reestablishing that may have impacted the Aspetuck land. I don't think that anything pertaining specifically to a dock at this location. I don't believe this to impact the Aspetuck land. Notifications will be made to all proper people, but I can't speak to, I can't commit the applicant to outreaches that are not obligated to do.
Well, I think it should be shown on the drawing so that we know where it is.
Right.
And then the commission.
I believe it to be.
And then the commission would contact the land trust and ask them for their input.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, I think there's probably not gonna be an implication, but the land trust has been planting native species and doing other things to improve the ecological health of that land, which probably has little or nothing to do with your.
Again, I believe it's kind of the area to the north of this building, to the south of the town beach. But yeah, showing that on the overall site plan property lines is certainly a reasonable request.
I would observe that finally removing the dilapidated timber structure and the danger that might present as a plus for the community and probably for navigation.
Brian?
Just a quick question. I haven't seen the design of this dock, but knowing the volume of people that walk from South Pine Creek Beach all the way around to Sasko or vice versa, will this impact them walking the ability to get on the dock and cross the dock?
They'll need to go under it.
Under it?
Under it. So there's clearance. So 7 feet of clearance at the toe of that rock slope.
Wow.
The toe of the rock slope being where the existing dilapidated dock is, that slope, is that what you're talking about?
No, the rock slope that's right in front of the building. If you look at our sheet 7, it probably shows that scenario best.
Deed won't permit anything, Brian, that wouldn't permit the public to pass through it.
Okay.
So
they're already watching for that.
They would already watch for that, and it would have to be designed accordingly to allow people to pass.
And that's why we showed that 7-foot distance there. The private property ends at mean high water. So on the land side of mean high water, the people really couldn't or shouldn't be up there.
Right. I'm just thinking when it's down just a little bit.
That's where if you look at kind of
they'll get by.
Yeah, they might have to get their feet a little wetter than they otherwise would have to, depending on the level of the tide. But it would be, you'd be able to pass under it.
It's not rocky where they're passing in this diagram. It's just beyond the rocky part.
There is some.
Looks like, at least the way it's drawing, it looks like it's.
Oh, yeah, that, I would envision that someone would pass where it's on the sand.
Yeah, okay.
The mean high water does come a couple feet up on the rock slope. So it could be that someone is walking on a slippery rock below mean high water within the public trust, but that's a dicey, tough walk.
This is what he's talking about.
That's
part of the sand is there.
Right.
I know my daughter and her friend go for runs and they time it around
Getting
low waters, then go down to Pine Creek and then come all the way around but you have to have a tide chart.
Right.
Yep. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Fine.
Jeff, do you want to?
My thought would be that we would want to draw the drawing showing the land trust property or where the conservation restriction is located.
Yes.
And I think it might be a good idea to go out and take a look at the property to do a site visit, which we haven't done, since we know all the properties in Southport Harbor pretty well, but that maybe we do that in this instance. And it would also be an opportunity for the new members to continue to understand what the commission's role is, and then formulate a recommendation once we have a comment from the Aspetuck Land Trust and the drawing, and then act on it in January.
Okay.
That would be unless anybody has a different.
I think that's a great idea. Site visit, a drawing with the showing the Aspetuck land easement, and make a decision in January. Any other questions from those of you on the phone?
May I, Madam
Chair? Sounds good.
Thanks, Eric. Pat Carroll, you were...
Yes, if I may, please, the harbor master has expressed my concern about those of us who, over the years, have walked from Pine Creek around the point, have fished at the point, and have made our way to Sasco Beach. And I didn't hear the conversation that took place relative to Brian's concern, so that was my concern about those who might want to walk from Pine Creek around to Sasco.
Well, they not impede traditional access along the shoreline.
Yes, Kim?
Yeah, Eric?
Yes, obviously a lot of people at low tide will walk the Pine Creek to Sasco Beach, or they'll run, then they'll walk. I mean, so there is public at low tide. There is, a lot of, I don't want to say a lot of traffic, but it has been for years something many people do year-round. It would be, if something were inhibiting people to freely walk at low tide through there, that probably might be a concern to the public.
Sure, absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you for your response.
You're welcome.
Folks on the phone, if you look at the document that was attached on the agenda that's on number 6, page 16 of it, it's a pretty good drawing in that shows the proposed installation, and it shows the distance between the sand where people would be running or walking and the bottom of that walkway up. So it's 7 feet 1 inch in the diagram, and it gets even higher as it goes a little further out if the tide were out further. So lots of room for people who don't play basketball to play.
Is high water on that diagram, drawing 7 of 7?
Yeah.
Is high water indicated?
High water is indicated. It's the line that cuts fully through that rock slope.
It says MHW.
Yeah, it's the MHW on the far left, and you follow it all the way through. It comes in above just existing rock beach and cuts through the lower third of
MHW. Which
That's right there.
Yeah,
this line right here.
Yeah.
They're going to remove the old stuff and put in a brand new.
So most of that rock slope, Brian, is effectively on private property, whether it is being walked upon now or not, somewhat irrespective, but most of that rock slope is not necessarily meant or able to be walked upon legally. The very bottom of it is, which would be a kind of a jagged area to walk. Once the tide is low enough, or you want to get your feet wet enough to walk on the beach, there's plenty of clearance. There's also clearance to walk under the pier at below high water on the revetment. But
so the line that shows 7 feet 1 inch underneath the pier.
Yes.
That is on public property.
Yes.
Yep, in the sand. Yeah.
Right, and that would not be available Well, you get your feet wetted,
You get your feet.
except at low tide,
Correct.
right.
So when the tide starts to get above the revetment, it gets to mean high water, it's kind of treacherous to be
Right,
walking along
right,
that revetment.
right.
'Cause you would have to be your feet in the water, but still on the rocks.
Right, slippery,
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
So I think if people are going around at higher tides, they probably are not doing so without crossing that boundary line.
right.
But again, that was something that we were aware of, which is why we show that dimension line there. We know that dimension line isn't at mean high water at the revetment.
reason to go out
But
there.
it's more effective.
Probably a good reason to go out for a site inspection where you
Right,
can show,
right.
you know,
Yeah.
what you're talking
Yeah,
about.
you can see
Yeah.
the stains in the rocks.
Yeah.
Would recommend you do it about water to get the better picture of what it is, but
Right.
if you look at the kind of the coloring of the rocks, I'm not telling anyone,
Right.
you guys will know.
Okay, so,
Can we communicate with Devin then to,
yeah, I
determine
think,
a time to go
I
out
think-
and take a look at
I
this?
think we'd like to do that, go out and take a look at the property, with your drawings, and, just get a feel for, where these are in real space.
Yeah, I'm sure the applicants would appreciate the notice, though, that I'm sure you all know you can just access right from Sasko Beach, and probably would actually be the easier way
Yes.
Right,
to access, because I know it's an ongoing construction site, so driving on the property might be more
Right.
difficult to orchestrate.
okay.
But if you were all comfortable coming from the
Well, we
beach.
could all go from Sasko Beach, that makes sense, actually, it's, yeah,
And we'd ask you to come with us to,
Happy to.
okay,
okay.
we'll work that out.
So we will,
There's some midday low tide next week in the 28th, so it would be a kind of a possibility sometime in the middle of next week. For sure.
okay, middle of next week, okay. We'll take a look at that, we'll
Okay.
Good idea.
find out what people's schedules are and try and put something together.
And I'll inquire on the mapping on the easement. I'm sure it has to exist. They went through all the
Right.
subdivision work, so it's gotta be at someone's fingertips.
So the property has been subdivided then?
I believe that it has been. I think that got through zoning.
And, well, I guess we talked about that, I was wondering how many properties and how many
Yeah,
would have, would have access to littoral rights? All right.
To the pier, is that the question?
Well, it took to the water, and therefore would be able to apply for a permit for their own pier.
Right.
right, would there be 4 piers, 3 piers? You know,
There's none other than I'm aware of,
Right.
but I don't actually know the shape of the subdivision.
Right,
And you're not clear who would have access to this pier, which?
I'm only clear in as much as I don't believe they're intend to raise that brick building. So the brick building is where this pier is launching from, so it'd be associated with however that is subdivided.
R-A-Z-E or R-A-I?
R-A-Z-E.
Thanks.
Sorry. Good catch there.
You never know it.
After I said it, I'm like, wait, that might be
But the question, that's a good question though, so this is intended to be a pier for one property owner's use, not a pier for
an association.
of people who might have properties.
Correct.
Right of way or.
Okay.
Yeah, I seem to recall reading there were gonna be three subdivisions on that property, but.
Yeah, there may well be.
Yeah.
This is the only one that I'm aware of that they're.
Citizen News.
well, and even, you know, whether or not, if there are 3 or however many there are, whether they're all within our jurisdiction is also, would be a question to be determined.
Right.
So, but let's take a look at it and get a better feel for what we're talking about, and then January 18th, is our next meeting, and, we would perhaps be in a better position with to make a decision and give you sort of a final.
I'm not clear on what the plan is to arrange the field trip. Who's doing that?
I thought it was your group.
We'll do it,
Okay.
we'll do it, and,
You just let me know.
I'll let Devin
And back to the point of it is,
Okay.
nothing stopping you from going.
and we can, well, we'd like to go with you because.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, I'll make myself available and,
Should we pick a date now?
Well, I don't have the tide chart is next week?
In the middle of the day next week, I go back to it, in my classes. Southport Harbor.
Unless the COVID stuff gets worse, I'll be away next week, but you guys can do it.
Yeah, we can
Okay.
do it. Monday, there's a low at 11:22 a.m. Tuesday, there's a low at 12:19. Whoops, wait a second. The low is at 12:19 in the afternoon.
Are they all very low, or?
No.
I don't think you need very low.
Okay.
Mid-tide would probably suffice.
I mean, actually, the one on the 28th is 0, so it's a totally mid.
Yeah, but I mean, say mid-tide.
Oh, using mid-tide?
Yeah.
But it's not a...
But I guess as you get further north, I just forget, you might need a little width to get around some stuff.
It looks like middle of the day time on the 27th, 28th. I can't see the 29th, it doesn't go that far, but I assume right around
12:27?
Yeah, and if the weather collapses, we could.
Yeah.
That's Monday, yeah?
Monday, 12:27?
I may not be able to, but that's okay. You don't need, like.
And what time did you propose?
When's the tide?
The tide on Monday is low at 11:22 a.m.
So 11 o'clock?
Okay.
Great.
11 o'clock, Monday the 27th?
At
We'll take a look.
at the beach park, Pasco Beach Park.
Pasco Beach parking lot, and we'll trek over. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Can
Very good.
I've already messed up our agenda by ignoring the Harbor Master's report. So I apologize. But while we have Devin, could we just quickly do Lower Wharf? Because, for the new commissioners, the Lower Wharf is, a plan to improve the docks and the stone wall around the Lower Wharf. Race has proposed, we need a permit to do that, and Race has proposed, has said that it would, thank you, Mr. Bishop.
Thank you.
Yep.
Nice to meet you
We'll
all.
touch base on, for Thursday?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, give me a call tomorrow.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks so much. See you again.
Race has told us that, for about $11,000, they can get us the permit. We had a permit for a number of years that included dredging. It expired through no fault of our own. DEP has said that we have to get a new permit. The dredging has held up the project for years and years, and so we've decided, the prior commission decided that we would accept the Race proposal to repair the Lower Wharf and the Lower Wharf area and some of the stonework, that we would proceed with that because we might actually be able to get that done. And so the commission voted that contingent upon the town's purchasing department's okay of using Race, because we did not go out to competitive bid. Race did the work to get the prior permit. The town has now said, the town went out to pre-qualification for coastal engineers. Race came out on the top of the list, and the town purchasing department has given us their blessing to proceed with the Race proposal. The only other condition that the prior commission mandated was that the Connecticut Port Authority, which had funded the prior work, now needs to allow us to repurpose the money that they awarded us several years ago, because we will no longer be doing the dredging. So we're still waiting for the okay, the official okay from the Connecticut Port Authority, that the money that they awarded us a couple years ago to dredge around the Lower Wharf area can be used instead to clean up around the Lower Wharf area. And unofficially, we believe that's possible, but we have not yet heard officially from the Connecticut Port Authority. So, why don't you point out where the Lower Wharf is?
And not to belabor the discussion, but that, this is the Lower Wharf, and this is the town boatyard. The town boatyard is subject to management by the Parks and Recreation Commission, not the Harbor Management Commission. The Lower Wharf, when it was acquired, I forget all the dates off the top of my head, but within the last 15 or 20 years or so, the management responsibility for the Lower Wharf rests with the Harbor Management Commission. The Harbor Management Commission provided a substantial amount of funds towards the purchase of that property, and those were funds that were obtained through the mooring permits. So the commission then worked for a number of years on a plan to improve this whole area in cooperation with Parks and Rec.
And who was it purchased from?
It was purchased from the private property owner at the time, and it was a fellow named Treves, Christian Treves. The plan that we came up with, I say we, but over a number of years, involved improving the launching ramp, involved dredging this area in here to get access to the better access to the federal channel. It included fixing, replacing these elevated piers. And sometime prior to that, we had removed the northern part of this north part of the elevated pier with the hope that we would be able to provide a dock for the community, well, you probably remember that, for the community sailing program. And then it was determined that there's ledge in here that precluded or would make a big expense to drive the pylons in. So the permit that we eventually received from Chief involved dredging this area, improving the boat launching ramp, fixing the wall, and I'm sorry to repeat what you're saying. And doing that. Replacing these piers. We were able to receive funds. We used some of our own funds that were collected through mooring permits. The town allocated funds for a capital project, and then more recently we received a substantial grant from the Connecticut Port Authority for small harbor improvements. And so with the commission's funds and with the capital monies from the town, we replaced all of the planks here from the boat launching ramp, and Public Works did that project. We didn't replace the last plank because it required deepening and dredging the area, and we were holding off on doing that. We got the permit to dredge this area, but the material was deemed, after it was tested, to be not suitable for disposal in Long Island Sound unless it was capped. We put the project out to bid. There were no other dredging projects, that could serve as our cap. And so this went on for several years. We renewed the permit every year until we couldn't renew it anymore. And Deep said we had to get a new permit. Now, with the concurrence from Parks and Rec Department and the Engineering Department, we don't feel that it's the value of dredging this is sufficient to continue to try to do it. Also, since the last permit, there have been additional requirements for testing of material that would go into Long Island Sound. So it might require another $40,000 or $50,000 of tests to do it. So it's like, people can say, well, what did you do over like 15 years? But we've been trying. So now we have, I believe it's still over $200,000 or thereabouts in the grant from the Port Authority. So we would like to get the permit again, but just for fixing the wall and making these piers better for the public. And we've been told by the Connecticut Port Authority, although not in a formal correspondence, that we can repurpose the money to do that. Then we asked, which did all the work to get us the permit in the first place, if they could give us a cost proposal for getting the new permit to fix that. They submitted a proposal for doing that work. We then had to discuss that with the town's purchasing department to determine that we could accept that proposal without having to go out to bid. And we felt that was reasonable because they did all the previous work. They did the construction drawings for doing the work. So rather than reinventing everything, that we would accept Race's proposal contingent on the purchasing department saying we don't have to go out to bid, and the Port Authority saying that we can repurpose the money. So I'm sorry for talking so much.
Thank you, you did a much better explanation than I did.
Very helpful. Thank you.
So,
Maybe I should.
So if I may ask, I understand the cost, the ramifications with that material being not suitable, and the cost of disposal, but you said the value was diminished for dredging, and why is that? You said
It's a relatively small amount of material. To get the permit, Devin can explain this, to redo the permit, to get the work, we don't have enough money to get the permit and do the work in hand. We'd have to apply for additional funds from the Port Authority, and then there'd still be no guarantee that we would get a contractor to do the work, and that there would be available cap, because it's a relatively small amount of material.
The one thing I'd add to that too, yeah, I think it's not worth it fiscally, but also back when we were starting this project 15 years ago, the state really clipped our wings on how much we could dredge under the docks and towards the shore. So if you look at the horseshoe-shaped docks, and as probably a lot of you know, those landward ones even sit on the mud at low tide. We never got authorization to be able to dredge that because that was a mud flat as a regulated resource. So even the past dredge permit we had only covered about the offshore half of the legs of the horseshoe. So it got us a little depth for the boat ramp, but other than that, it was sort of a diminishing returns. Even just from a public perception standpoint, you battle for 15 years to get a dredging permit, and you come back and your docks are still sitting on the mud.
Right.
I think people will be like, what?
How many extra feet would it buy, essentially? What's the... It was,
I don't have the drawings in front of me, but I think it was a 4-foot depth.
Wasn't the approval for 6 feet?
I think it stepped.
It stepped out, but...
Because we had to step it to, again, further minimize side slope impacts. I think it was 4 feet under the docks and 6 feet further out, 3 or 4 feet near the...
The contaminants were worse the most recent time they were tested than the previous time. The state of New York now requires their approval for dumping and capping in the Long Island Sound, and the state has been refusing to cooperate with Connecticut. So there were a lot of reasons. We looked at the possibility of paying to actually dredge and dry out the material and then ship it to someplace on land that would take the polluted material, but that's just economically just not feasible either. And I think that we concluded that at the end of the day, the sort of the marginal benefit that we would get from this project with the money that we're spending on dubious chance of getting to actually execute it just didn't make sense.
And if we were able to dredge under those full docks and get all the boats on those docks, full tidal access, I could possibly say, yeah, let's keep fighting the good fight. But we were having to fight with New York State with their opposition to the sediment. We were having to fight with the Army Corps with their increased analysis matters, and then the state of Connecticut with respect to the mud flat. So it was.
And we found that it would only make the launch ramps really totally available for 1 more hour of the tide. So it wasn't like people couldn't use them if they waited an hour or went over to South Benson.
Sure.
They would, so for all of those reasons.
And then I think with the Parks and Rec discussion as well, because there was a Parks and Rec component here, that right. If they're going to make that sort of investment to make a more tidally accessible boat ramp, was South Benson a better place for that?
Yeah.
Yeah, but are you monitoring at all the amount we're losing at the horseshoe docks every year? Because the thought is, as we go forward, that's our primary access point for all the town moorings. People's dinghies, that thing's loaded with whalers, as you know.
I know.
Carolina skippers, we're losing an inch a year or 2 inches a year. I know at low tide now, a lot of us are paddling our boats out with oars because we can't even dip an outboard in.
Yeah.
We're lucky to have water under it.
Move it.
Something you can't even move. So I'm wondering, something the commission should be considering now, because in 3 years we're going to lose 3/4 of it, and what's our plan B?
Yeah, we have done, I believe, 2 hydrographic surveys in that area over the 15 years. So we have 2 data points in 15 years. It's not that rigorous analysis. What we've done a lot more of on the other side of the shoal, I think for 6 or 7 years, there were annual surveys either between my company and the Corps that we were able to kind of line up over each other to get real accretion rates on an annual basis. So Brian, no, not to the level that you're talking about to really ascertain how many inches per year. The fact is, it is diminishing slowly, as just you all would know, and it's tough because again, the dredging issue there is one of the mud flats. Take the sediment quality aside, then it's saying, okay, we need to dredge a resource. Right. The state of Connecticut is going to say, okay, you got to mitigate that resource, and how are you going to mitigate that, even if we allow you to do it?
I'm just wondering, as part of the plan, we should consider the lower wharf is putting some dinghies there, turning that into a partial dinghy dock to. We did consider that. We had probably with Fairfield Community Sailing, if you recall this, there was a component of that overall build-out project that incorporated a Ideal 18 dock opposite, off the lower wharf, opposite the, Jeff, where the cutout is there.
Yeah, right there. Yeah. And that was met with fierce opposition.
Yeah.
From everyone, as far as I could tell.
I think Community Sailing felt we were better off where we were, and we were more protected from wind as well, and in putting our boat together.
Right.
I was just thinking for dinghy purposes, if we're getting so many slips, do we need to be able to park some dinghies there to move it?
Anything that gets done down there is under such scrutiny, and if you're putting piles, there's sightline issues.
I think the access issue for the non-club members should be just a topic we talk more about, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
The other thing we did mention, Brian, is was there alternative dock reconfigurations of taking that horseshoe and aligning it more towards the channel. So rotating it so it aligned with the channel and pushing it further towards the channel, so there's deeper water.
That's true.
So that was a consideration. That was some discussions.
Right.
As we talked around, it's a pretty small sliver of water that you could even do that in, even if it got support. So that one kind of failed on its own weight as well.
Might also say, Brian, the deed for the lower wharf precludes doing anything other than what's there, except for a dock for community sailing, which we had put into the deed, and we weren't able to implement.
Okay.
And then Bill's question about how we develop this, repurposing plan, that was also the sense of the granting agency, the Connecticut Port Authority, that it wasn't worth continuing to spend money on permitting and on a project that we didn't know if we could do. So also their concurrence that it was appropriate to change the focus of it.
Yeah, and even once you got it done, it would not, I think, reap the benefits. Once complete, it would not address Brian's concerns.
No, right.
Half the votes would still be sitting in the mud.
Right. That was right. So that's our Lower Wharf project. Race will be representing us.
Excellent.
And also appearing before us. Is that an issue?
I'd imagine anyone that would take the project on would be representing you and appearing before you. I don't know how any consultant could do anything but.
We talk about. You mentioned the professional engineering guidelines, because, for example, tonight you were representing a private client.
Correct.
For the commission, and then you're also going to be representing the commission and doing work for the commission.
But the chair's point was that this body would need to hire someone, and this body would need to prove something.
Right, and
it has to be the same.
Right, and I'm just wondering what the professional code is. That's all.
And Jeff, you're mentioning something else.
I think she's saying the same thing.
Oh, are you saying?
Yeah, I think that we were discussing this.
Okay.
We want to make clear that we're retaining race under a sole source contract. And at the same time, race is representing private clients before the commission.
Yeah.
So that we wanna make sure that there isn't an appearance of a conflict.
Yeah, and I can address that on a few fronts, and I did bring with me the code of ethics that applies to my profession, applies to my license, the license that I need to have to do the profession that I have. So if I don't comply to this, they take my license, I don't have my license, I don't have a job. So something I take near and dear to my heart. But first and foremost, our primary role as an engineer licensed in the state, engineer land surveyor shall at times recognize his or her primary obligation to protect health, safety, welfare of the public, and performance of his duties. So we have an obligation on protecting health and welfare. So that it shouldn't matter who is paying us or who we're representing, because if we're protecting health and welfare, we're protecting health and welfare. We also have obligations on avoiding conflicts, but if conflicts are unavoidable, disclosing them. So we can't operate without full disclosure. Everyone would have to understand and be comfortable that, okay, this is the situation. There's also rules even on compensation. We couldn't be compensated by two parties on one project. For that appearance of impropriety. So we have very specific rules that I take very, very seriously. My organization takes very, very seriously. It's not too dissimilar to a lot of other commissions I've worked for and appeared before. I've worked for the commissions and appeared before the commissions. And in Stratford, I appeared before the commission, was on the commission. And I would need to recuse myself in the situations. I would need to make those situations evident. So that's the position that I understand it. And again, I'm not an attorney. I'm an engineer, and that's my understanding of the ethics as it would apply to the situation.
Okay, I appreciate that, and I think the commissioners do too. We're not. I wasn't trying to put you on the hot seat, but it's so clear that you're here in two roles this evening, and we're thrilled to have your input on both occasions. But we just wanted to be sure, especially since we did not go out to bid, and that we're all on the same page, and that we were the race's professionalism and knowledge was what we appreciate and what we're looking for, and that there was nothing else going on in terms of our projects and the projects that you're managing.
Yeah, and I would want you all to be 100% comfortable. Our reputation goes beyond any one job. I live in town here, been in business for 22 years. You have my word that I will do right by this commission and the obligations that my license requires.
From your perspective, though, the code of professional standards that you're bound to addresses this situation that we're talking about, or the situation we're talking about where you represent both the private applicants as well as the commission, is something that can be worked through or is acceptable or
simultaneously.
Well,
there's that code of professional standards.
Well, I don't want to. I am not an attorney, so I don't want to get too. A conflict of interest is if there is a conflict. There's not necessarily a conflict.
Yeah, you can't. You certainly couldn't come and represent. For example, someone wants to put a dock in, and when we, as a commission, have him opine regarding on your behalf, you can't be representing both sides of a transaction.
Right.
At the same time. Here's a little different because one of them is a dock off of Sasco, the other is a dredging, a wharf, project, which is.
I feel like we need to be, as commissioners, just mindful of what's going on here. You also have a role in Pequot Yacht Club.
Yes.
And you participate in the mooring committee representing Pequot because of Pequot's interest in activities in the harbor as well, legitimately. And so we just have to be open and mindful of it. And if we ever have a question about propriety, we have to talk about that.
Right, and so far we don't. But again, since we had to go through the town purchasing requirements. We're not going out to bid. We're relying on you so much, and happy to do that. I just want to be sure that we all understand that at times you will be representing other people when you come before us, and that's
correct.
That's
and
yeah.
I believe the disclosure is the important piece.
Right, absolutely.
And Brian, jump in if I'm saying this wrong, because it's not necessarily a conflict until it's a conflict, but the lack of disclosure in and of itself gives the appearance of impropriety, which causes
taking an inconsistent position, telling us it's certainly okay to do that, and then next week saying, oh, you can't do that.
Yeah.
Different client. To be consistent.
So like Brian said, a conflict would be if my company came in to present on this dock, and then I was consultant to the commission to offer a recommendation. Conflicts were when I was on the Stratford Commission, and I had a vote, I would recuse myself. That is a conflict.
Right.
I don't see this as a conflict other than the vocalization of the layering and the acknowledgement that if a conflict arose, I would be obligated to disclose that.
Great. Excellent.
Will there be some language, some sentence on this in our minutes so that it was clear that we had this discussion?
Yeah,
I think that's
absolutely.
important. And that's why.
Absolutely. That's.
Yes. To be transparent, this will be reflected in the minutes of the meeting.
Absolutely.
Good.
Absolutely.
And ongoing, we should be mindful of it just to be comfortable.
Right.
So I think that it was previously, the commission agreed to retain race, provided that we could repurpose the money and we'd have the money to pay them.
Right.
And also provided that the purchasing department agreed that we could retain race with a sole source agreement.
Right.
So I don't think any additional motion is needed now.
No, oh no.
But we do need a formal letter from the Connecticut Port Authority.
Right, and hopefully we'll have that by next meeting or February at the latest.
I hope to have it right after New Year's.
Right. Okay, that's Lower Wharf.
That was a good discussion.
That was actually.
Yeah, no, I'd much rather have the discussion. Again, no one project is worth our reputation. Nothing's worth our reputation.
For any of us.
Yeah.
Excellent.
You live on Oak Hill?
I do.
We're neighbors.
Oh, really?
I live on.
You like this picture? This is
oh, great.
The dock, the dinghy dock at low tide.
I saw your car in your driveway.
Yeah.
Okay.
Small world, literally.
Thank you, Devin.
You're so welcome. Thank you all.
We really appreciate your time, and we'll see you on the 27th at 11 o'clock.
That's for the walk. Let's hope it's not snowing.
Or raining real hard.
The one thing we didn't check is the weather.
We didn't. Well, we can punt. We can punt if that doesn't. Thank you very much.
No. If you don't mind if I just hang out.
Oh, be our guest.
Thank you all. Really do appreciate it.
Harbor Master's report.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. For the record, Brian LeClaire. The moorings are all out of the harbor. I've had discussions with Pequot, Travis in particular. I'll be going out there and inspecting them myself, taking a look at them now that they're out of the water. The records have been updated on the onlinemooring.com website. So the boats that were in there this year are all marked correctly as being in there. Any hanging approvals have been cleaned up. There were several mistakes that we had to correct that I caught, approvals approved for the 22 year. So we had to back things out and change them and make it clear that everyone's expiring December 31st. Online Mooring was talking to them today about another issue that popped up. Has indicated that we have probably one of the, if not the most complicated systems of all of their clients for keeping track of our mooring.
And those rules that they had to write the program for. Right?
Yes, but and we're prepared to open the renewals. We've confirmed everything. The notices will go out January 1st. Knock on wood, should be just fine with the letters, with everything set up. I've sent emails out previously, and I did them again today to the constituent groups, telling the folks in the North Anchorage, and that is, past Pequot. There's those 50 moorings past Pequot, that there's going to be a change under the rules where Pequot will be applying for a permit for all of them under their commercial anchorage, as a commercial anchorage. I'll be giving them the permit and then they will assemble the boat registrations, the insurance certificates, and the safe boating certificates, put them in a central location where I can access them, and give me a spreadsheet of who they've issued those permits to. They make the decisions for their members in that north area. We'll be issuing stickers to them for the boats, so all those boats will be stickered appropriately. As to the other 80 odd locations, I will be issuing those permits. Everyone has gotten an email from me telling them what we're going to be needing, the boat registration, exactly what a boat registration is. I've told them about insurance, what a certificate of insurance is, and beginning January 1st, everyone needs a safe boating certificate. And so if you have a mooring in your name, it's got to be your boat, your registration, your insurance, your safe boating certificate.
And that's a new law passed?
A new rule under the commission when they revise their rules to have the safe boating certificate. And we keep track of it. You should have one anyways, but we are keeping track of that. A month or so ago, I gave everyone instructions how to find theirs if they've lost it over the years, because some of us have had them 20 plus years and may not know where they are. I also gave them instructions how to take the class online. You don't even have to show up now. You can do online safe boating. So there's no reason anyone doesn't have a safe boating certificate. I received one inquiry from an individual who questioned whether the pilot of his boat could have the safe boating certificate instead of him as the owner, since he doesn't sail or maneuver his own boat. The answer is no. The rules say the person who has the mooring, who owns the boat, who has the insurance, who has the registration, has to have a safe boating certificate, whether you move your boat or not, drive it yourself. So I indicated he should get his own safe boating certificate.
How'd that go?
He hasn't responded yet.
Good.
I can't do anything about it. It's not a bad thing to have if you own a boat.
Right.
It's
not that hard a test to pass.
And you may have to move your boat someday. You drive it yourself.
Yeah.
And it's also required to register a boat in the state now.
Yes.
Is it required now?
Yeah, it's right on the registration form, the new form.
No, right.
So the emails all went out to them. I think we're in good shape. Everything, I think, is under control. I did look at there was a question we had with the person who was at the top of our list, because he indicated he was a commercial fisherman. They get a priority for a mooring. However, just because you say you're a commercial fisherman doesn't make you one. So I asked for I talked to the DEP fisheries as to what documentation I would need. I received some information, and then Jack and I discussing it, it turns out he came to the top of the list chronologically, regardless of being a commercial fisherman. So that's probably something that's not relevant to his application.
Well, it could be, but it's not in his interest.
It's not in his interest to have it there at this point.
Because he can just take it as a regular recreational boater and have complete flexibility, because if you look at our rules, the fisherman has to keep fishing or he loses his mooring.
So if I give the gentleman a mooring as a commercial fisherman who also happens to be next in the list, and he stops commercial fishing next year, he loses his mooring. So it's in his interest about that. And I talked to him about that, forgetting the commercial fishing altogether at this point, because he can
still be a commercial fisherman.
He can do whatever he wants, but he's just not permitted as one. It doesn't matter.
Right.
He's permitted as a recreational.
What's the waiting list? What's the wait now?
That's a good question, because I can't tell. Without digging, I spent a couple of hours looking through the boxes of records, and we have records back to the early 60s, I think 64.
Really?
But they're handwritten. So I went back, and one of the reports I went off of was dated from, I think it was 1980 I had. I was just looking at the wait list. I happened to use one as a basis. The one I copied was 2008, I'm sorry. So I looked at this gentleman who was 75 at that time in 2008. Now he's at the top of the list. So that kind of gives you an indication how, it takes a while. It takes 20 years.
Depends on the boat.
Depends on the boat. It could take longer because he has a large boat. We only have so much room for large boats with big drafts. They don't fit everywhere. They fit on the helixes off of Perry's Green, but you can't take a boat with a 6-foot draft and stick it out, at the south wall by the golf course. It's just not deep enough. Or you might be too long. You're going to be too heavy. You're going to be dragging all the moorings everywhere with you because it's a tough bottom. It's a muddy bottom. We had three. I talked to Travis. A couple of the moorings have dragged over the summer, so we're going to have to double up on the mushrooms and the mid wall because it's sloped. It's muddy. It's not a good holding ground, and boats were pulling them over. So it's a little bit of a challenge based upon the size and the weight of your vessel.
And there was a change that came to us on the RTM about 3 or 6 months ago, right? Wasn't there some modification that was made?
early in the fall?
The rules that you have right here are the rules that we had changed in May, Kim, is that when it became effective?
We've
Just
been
the
all,
rules and procedures?
Yeah, May 21.
And the town code needed to be brought into alignment with
Right.
the rules, including the most recent changes. And the town code related to harbor management hadn't been updated in quite a long time.
Okay.
So there were things that had changed in previous rule changes that had never been incorporated into the town code. And so as part of our project to update this document, we looked at the town code and said, okay, here's all the things that are wrong in the town code, not too many actually, and let's get them in sync so that somebody looking at the town code, somebody reading this detailed document that we, sort of our Bible, would see that these things tie directly together, and that's what you guys are doing.
Yeah, so probably, so like 6 months or so, that makes sense, yeah.
Right, so now you saw the other side of it, this is the detail behind what you guys are putting through.
And these are great reading for you gentlemen, as new members, to read. They explain everything about the plan, the preferences, the interests, how things work.
Right.
They're very complicated,
Yeah.
detailed rules to make it fair for everyone.
Sure.
That you can't, you can't be selling your mooring. It's not transferable unless you're a spouse and your spouse dies.
And it's not mistaken, I think that's, and so, several members of the RTM, were surprised that anybody could moor, right? You don't have to be,
correct.
like at the marina, you have to be a town resident, so that,
Right.
that was it, that was very enlightening to many members of the RTM, that anybody could moor.
If we ever want it dredged again, yes, the Army Corps of Engineers says it has to be open to all on an equal basis.
Right, this is a federal navigation.
So Fairfield residents have no preference over anyone else?
Correct.
Yeah, so people are just surprised, I don't think members of the RTM really understood.
Correct.
And as Jack said, that's because the harbor is served by a federal navigation project authorized by the U.S. Congress. So it has to be open to all on equal terms.
Yeah, and there's probably federal funding, I presume,
No.
Well, there was the last dredging project, but it's specifically authorized by an act of Congress.
Yeah, it's like parking your car at the back end of South Benson Marina, anybody can park there.
Right.
But that'll be part of Jeff's presentation next month. We'll give you the whole, how did we get here?
Yeah, that's great.
Now what do you do?
From the 19th century, the early 19th
Yeah.
century.
And if there are any other suggestions that you have on, so that myself or new members can get up to speed, any recommendations on
Well,
That's what we're doing.
just this, participating, there's a presentation that on the Harbor Management Commission website that Jeff
Saw
did
that,
in
yeah.
July of 2020, that's also very
Right, that's very
valuable.
helpful.
Saw that, yeah.
Reading the rules and reading the plan, I mean, those are the three that will give you the broader picture.
Great.
Plan the rules in that July 2020 presentation.
And the beginning of the plan goes in narrative form through the history of how we got to where we are.
Oh, great.
It's pretty
It's a great
interesting.
history, it's a great history that you put together.
Yeah.
That's fair.
I think one thing that I've learned is that this is one of the most historic locations in New England in terms of navigation.
Really?
And,
Yeah.
and the federal navigation project here was authorized by Congress in 1829.
Really?
Which makes it one of the earliest authorized navigation projects in the country, because it's one of the earliest in New England, and New England was the earliest.
Yeah,
So
interesting.
it's a fascinating history,
Yeah.
going back, and so you learn about not just the history of Southport, but the history of navigation improvements in the United States.
Interesting. And likewise, the Penfield Light is around the 1800s as well, correct?
I'm not sure about that, but that's interesting. The Penfield Light, and not to get into it now, but the three beacons in Southport Harbor, they were authorized in 1824 or 1825, but they're not considered part of the Federal Navigation Project because they're not maintained by the Army. They're maintained by whatever the lighthouse service was then, and now the Coast Guard. So that's similar to the lighthouses that were authorized back in that time. So yeah,
So
we'll continue to talk.
Yeah,
We'll continue to talk
We
about
can stay here until midnight.
Yeah, and I'm mindful of time, Brian.
Yeah, sorry, Brian.
And just, so I think everything is under control, and I've come up to speed quickly here, learning everything. Went to a seminar with online mooring, and last week and a half ago, they had a training seminar. Things are good. One last issue we have, which Jeff I think is going to talk about tonight, is the mooring issue. With we have a federal channel going in there, and we're not allowed to put boats in the federal channel. And we're gonna be dredging it at some point, so we have to make representations as a commission, that we're not in the federal channel. However, it looks like, Jeff was out there Friday with some folks doing surveys. At least one boat that's on one of our moorings was sitting in the channel because of where they are. So Jeff could talk in more detail. It may become problematic for us in reissuing permits.
Why don't we do that right now, since you introduced it?
And that's all that's a good, yeah. That's all I have. That's what
Are there any questions, before we get to the federal channel and mooring, any questions for the harbor master?
There's nothing in the mooring committee minutes that he hasn't already covered, so
Okay, great,
we can say the mooring committee was covered by.
Yeah, we had a great mooring committee meeting last week.
We did.
So,
that will take.
And the mooring committee is a subcommittee of this commission, just so you know.
And, yes.
Jack chairs, so we have a separate meeting on just the mooring.
Separate, apart from the harbor manager.
Correct.
Correct.
And we're soliciting members, so. Okay, Jeff, the boat in the channel.
Yeah, pardon me for sounding, talking all the time here.
Sure.
Yeah. Let's start with this, and this is partly for the new members. But the Federal Navigation Project was authorized in different times over many years. But the channel comes in from Long Island Sound, or did, and then goes up here, and up to 1996, the channel ended here. And so all of this wide area through here and out here and down into Long Island Sound, that was all a federal channel, interestingly. And the history of it we'll talk about, because it's much wider than a channel, of course. And then there was the federal Anchorage back up in here. That was the source of the conflicts and the controversies that led to the harbor management plan. We can go over that at another time. But the yacht club was occupying the federal Anchorage, and that was in violation of federal policy. And so it just so happened at that time in the 1980s, the Corps of Engineers was making a concerted effort to enforce all of its policies, and the U.S. Attorney got involved, and it was quite a conflict for about 10 years, which we solved with the harbor management plan.
And how long ago was that again? That was
1990s, early.
Oh, so the issue with the yacht club's occupation of the Anchorage was identified in the 1980s.
Yeah.
The harbor management plan was, what's the date, 1995?
Yeah, but exactly.
So we were working
for years up till that.
We were working on it for years. And the solution to this issue was that the former federal Anchorage would be defederalized. And the yacht club would have the opportunity to occupy it for its own purposes, but in exchange, the yacht club would participate and work with the Harbor Commission to provide services to the boating public. So that's the origin of the yacht club being a partner, unusual throughout Connecticut, in working with the Harbor Management Commission to maintain the harbor.
And what do they do exactly as part of that?
Right, Ted Jennings was active at that time, and he was actually one of the founders of Community Sailing of Fairfield. And so we are a part of that effort to reach out to the community. Our mission is to make sailing available to the public.
Through the Pequot Yacht Club and
the yacht club provides public use of its service dock, provides gas,
Pump out, water,
pump out, but also
more service for visitors, fuel.
But also more importantly, it provides the mooring maintenance functions for the Harbor Commission at cost. It doesn't charge more than just its cost of doing that. And it's always provided services to the harbor master and to the commission for resolving issues. So we can go into all of that in much more detail.
It's a great collaboration.
Yeah, that's the point. Between the commission, the harbor master, and the yacht club makes it unique. At the same time this was defederalized, which took place in an act in 1996, this area up in here was changed from channel to anchorage. And therefore the boats that are in this wide area in here in the main anchorage could continue to be in the anchorage because it's no longer a channel. And then in the narrow part, this stayed as a channel. And that federal act in 1996, Act of Congress, there was a whole process that led up to that, but it was at the Commission's request to make that change. And that followed the Harbor Management Plan, which established this to be the policy of the town. Then later, so that was changed. This remained a channel. In 2007, the commission was concerned that boats in this narrow part here could be encroaching into the channel. So we requested another act of Congress that created a line, imaginary line, in about this location. So the channel came in, and then once boats started to be moored, it would all be in Anchorage. So that we wouldn't have the issue of boats being moored in a channel. And now, more recently, we've been concerned, especially since we're working...
Before you flip, maybe you should just show for the new members what we talk about, the north wall, mid wall, south wall versus the helix area, just because we've been using those phrases, you have no idea what we're talking about.
These are sections of the mooring field in the harbor.
We broke up for the purpose of managing the moorings. We identified moorings in certain locations of the harbor, separate. So the helix field is the area where the deeper water is and the larger boats are moored.
If you go there, you're looking...
Call you within the hour, okay?
Pat?
Never ends, okay.
We can hear you, Pat.
Pardon me, sorry.
So the helix, and then the wall moorings are along the side.
North, mid, and
North,
south.
mid.
And what do you call them, wall moorings?
They're like that
There's a
wall.
wall.
Oh, got it.
If you're in the water, you'll see there's a
Got it.
wall.
You can see.
So the part in the back, that from the way we're looking here, we call North Anchorage, and that's the part that's a commercial mooring field for Pequot Yacht Club, exclusive use.
So especially as over time, this sand has encroached into which is of course our big issue now to deal with, pushing boats away from the side, we were concerned that boats are increasingly, the mooring locations pushed into what was still the channel. So then we requested a federal act again to amend the boundaries and the configuration of it that would, in about this location, I'll show you more specific in a bit. So the entrance channel comes in, and when you get to about here, it's all Anchorage. So that we can place boats in that area, and we agreed to maintain a fairway, so that boats can pass. But it was okay, it's legal to have boats moored there. And one of the things that we have to do if we're working with the Corps now to try to remove that sandbar, is to attest that everything is all the boat moorings are managed in accordance with the Corps' policy. In other words, no boats in the channel, no unfair restrictions for residents and non-residents. So the question came up this year. Oh gosh, and this doesn't show the mooring walls in place, but whether boats that were in recent years moored here or in the lower wall part are actually in the channel. So the survey department of the town, which has always been helpful to us, staked, here's Harbor Road, about here.
Around this tree, was it right here?
Somewhere around here. They staked out a line of sight so we can determine where this channel line is. In other words, the channel comes in and it becomes an anchorage here. So where exactly, it's hard to identify it on the surface of the water, but they placed two marks on the floats, and then a stake over here, and a stake down here, so we could do a line of sight across. And so that to determine how many boats that we're going to have to relocate, or not assign to a person on the waiting list this year if someone else is vacant. So that was an exercise that we went through on Friday, and it's not complete yet. We know that one boat that's last year was moored here, is south, is this way of the line. There may be one and more, and maybe two more. So that's part of the ongoing management of the harbor, to try to make sure everything is done, as Brian said, according to the rules.
Okay, question?
Thank you for that review.
No, well, that's information, and it was, it's very interesting to see how it turned out. Okay, mooring committee, Jack said that...
I looked at my minutes, and there's nothing that hasn't already been brought up, so I think that I can just report that everything's been covered.
Okay, plan update. Doug and Jeff got together and reviewed a presentation that Jeff is working on. And is there anything you want to report to the commission on that, or?
Doug and I talked about modifying slightly the presentation that we've done, and this is intended to be for public outreach, because we're updating the harbor management plan. And we've already provided it to the RTM in the course of updating the town code. But as we get to presenting the amendments to the harbor management plan, it will be valuable again. And we were talking about, the presentation that you'll see on the website now, we were talking about adding narration to that. So someone could look at it and not just read what's there, but have some explanation to it. And Doug thought, and I thought it was an excellent idea, that one of the high schools may be able to help us with this, so set up how to overdub the presentation. And to do that, we would remove the writing or the text from each slide and just have the narration in the background. So he was working on that to see how best to do that, which I thought was a very, very good idea. Because, in other words, it would, well, you know
Okay,
what I just
Yeah.
said, yeah.
It makes sense, yeah.
So we're about halfway through updating the plan, maybe halfway, almost halfway.
I hope so, we can, yeah.
And we have a grant from the Connecticut Port Authority also to do that. As part of that exercise, we will have to have a public meeting, and we will have to present to the RTM. So getting the plan updated is important, but it's only step one of a three big step process.
We have a subcommittee also working on that, and could
we
benefit
do,
from
and
some new members helping us.
We definitely want volunteers for that too, absolutely.
Is that something that you see taking the course of 2022 or longer than 2022?
I think it really depends on COVID. How do you have a public meeting? How much input can you get? How much does it slow it down if we have to do it virtually and poll people electronically as opposed to having a big group get together?
Our plan hasn't been updated since the original one in 1995, so it's beyond overdue.
But many, the policies are still, I think, valid.
Right.
And much of what we're updating is to reflect accomplishments that we've done.
Oh.
The main issue that we have I shouldn't say issue, or new thing to put into the plan is our approach to, we're working out with the Corps to remove part of that sandbar and restore the full width of the 100-foot channel there. That's what I think is the most challenging part of the update to the plan, to reach agreement as to how we're going to do that, and then that becomes part of the plan that we implement.
And that is on the agenda. Again, I apologize, I'm messing up this agenda left and right tonight. That's what we're calling sand management. And we're working with the Army Corps of Engineers on that. And Jeff, is there any update from Coral about, she still in New Orleans?
No, we've sent to the Corps of Engineers information that they've requested having to do with what we talked about earlier, the history of the navigation project. And I don't know how much we want to get into this today, but it's a fascinating topic. And somebody, I don't know, Don, if it was you or Bill, asked about what the wall is. Well, you can see that this jetty, and then at the end of the jetty, there's a wall. And that's part of the Federal Navigation Project that was authorized in 1829. And so the history of that, and one of our tasks now, and we're going to be working with the Country Club of Fairfield to address this and reach agreement, is if and when that this sandbar is dredged to restore the 100-foot channel, the Corps needs approval, of engineers needs approval from the state of Connecticut. In effect, a permit, just not called a permit, but like a private landowner does to build something. And we have to declare who owns it. And that's what we're grappling with now.
So it's either the town of Fairfield or I guess the country club,
The federal government.
Oh, really?
So that's what we're grappling with now. We'll have a discussion with the Country Club at Fairfield. They've always been a good partner in the previous work that we've done to dredge or to excavate in the channel. But we have a plan, we're working on it, and that's one of our perhaps most important projects.
It's very shallow. I mean, I haven't been in that was my vote in years, but it's a very shallow, right? It's only a few feet, correct?
What is that?
The distance between the water and that wall is a very short, small wall, right? The height of that?
Well, it depends on the tide height.
Oh, of course, yeah.
It could be 8 feet tall.
Oh, wow, low tide. At low tide, yeah.
At low tide. Then high tide, you're always below the height of it. The water doesn't come over.
Yeah, it's probably been the high tide.
And it's steep when you come in too, Bill, the way it is. It's a steep drop, pretty steep drop at that.
Yeah. It's a substantial structure, and you know what the purpose of it, when it was authorized, was to, first of all, the shoreline was much different then, and all of this land was wetlands. It was known as sunken land on the old survey maps. And there was a barrier beach here in a much different configuration. So the jetty, well, they called it a breakwater, but was meant to block the movement of sand from the barrier beach from going into the channel. And the wall was meant to channelize the flow of the river more into the main part of the harbor instead of spreading out into the marshland to the east. So that was the purpose of it. And then it's officially known as a dike, but we call it the harbor wall.
Mm-hmm. And there's a big gate on it too. Is it a tide gate, I guess you'd call it, or whatever we call that structure?
But the tide gate and
the wall.
And this area here, because remember this was authorized in 1829 and finished in 1835 or thereabouts. The Country Club wasn't incorporated until 1914. And then they filled the land in 1915. So this predates the Country Club by many years.
I always thought they built it.
Right. So anyway, I got off the track.
Yeah, well, thank you.
It's part of what we live here.
Yeah. Thank you.
Of course, that's a whole other discussion.
But we look forward to solving this problem.
Because it's filling in fast. It's filling in very fast. And you can't, at low tide, you can't get two boats between the lower wharf and the dune, the bump.
And just to give you a little bit more information, when the federal government agreed to dredge the harbor in 2004 and 5 or whatever that season was, after the harbor management plan was approved and we addressed those issues of unequal access, we had approval to dredge the 100. But the DEP at the time, it's now DEEP, it was Environmental Protection, would not allow that to take place because growing on the top of the sandbar are grasses that are considered threatened and not endangered but threatened. And then subsequent to that, threatened or endangered bird species known as the pike plover nested on it. So those were constraints to being able to
So fishing on Pine Creek as well.
Just to clarify for me, my daughter asked me a question a long time ago. I mean, they've been going in and out of this harbor since 1639 or thereabouts, right? The dredging issues that we face today, all the sand questions that we face today, are a relatively recent development. Are they not? Or am I incorrect? I mean, recent in the terms of because prior to in the 19th century, you didn't have that wall there. You didn't have the other things with ships might have passed more easily in and out of the harbor. Is that fair to say?
Not really. There's a fascinating book. It's got hundreds of pages in it, and it talks about every town. I forget the name of it, but it's referenced in that presentation we put online. And there's an illustration in that book from the early 1800s, and it shows it's an artist's rendition of people standing on the sandbar at the time, and they put in logs, like vertically into the ground to stop the movement of sand into the channel. So that was in effect the first jetty. And in the Corps of Engineers reports, they talked about, at the time, again, of the early 1800s, of the townspeople dredging the harbor using oxen and road scrapers at low tide. And the channel was only like 4 feet deep, I guess, at low water. And then in the later 1800s, after this stuff was built, then there was authorization of channels, and the federal government got involved in the dredging. But up until 1960, when the Corps dredged, I sound like a know-it-all, but we're just reading all this stuff. When the Corps dredged in 1960, they dredged, there wasn't any sandbar. They had removed it as they did, in previous dredging operations. But from 1960 to 2004, nobody did anything, and that's when this built up. So the jetty wasn't maintained. If it was maintained properly, as sand built up on this side, it would be cut back and put on, moved back along the beach to the east, but that didn't take place. So from 1960 to when we started doing the harbor management plan, this in effect was neglected, and it built up to the point it is now, and the grass grew and the birds nested on it. So that's.
Thank you, very helpful to me.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great for the context.
More to come. More to come. Jeff's put together a terrific presentation on the history of dredging.
Yeah.
And so that will be cycling through as well. So we, plan update, I guess please help us. Status and scope of HMC's responsibility for Lower Wharf. I'm waiting for a response from the town attorney. No word yet. Our budget request, as I mentioned earlier, everyone got a copy of the budget message. We are requesting no additional money from the town over what we used in 2021 and 2020.
And what was that?
About $21,000. 23.
23,000 in
Yep.
2020 and 2021.
Yep. And I need, because we lost our budget man, I need a commissioner to manage the budget presentation with the first select woman and the RTM and the Board of Finance. And Eric or Sam, I can in good conscience ask commissioners who have been on the commission for 2 hours to do that.
Because I was going to jump in. No,
We have a plan.
So Eric or Sam, are you there? Could you do it?
I'm here. It's Sam.
Good. Yes, Sam.
Eric, you here?
Eric, Sam, Eric.
I'm here.
Okay. So the budget should be pretty easy. I believe last year Ted spent about 20 minutes virtually with the first select woman and her chief of finance. I don't believe there was a presentation of the RTM, and I don't believe there was a Board of Finance presentation. And the numbers have not increased. Can I ask you, one of you, to proceed, go forward with this?
I'll take that responsibility. I don't mind talking to the first select woman about it at all.
Great, Sam. Thank you, and I will forward to you the budget itself and with the budget message, et cetera. You'll have the whole shooting match.
And so that just is the regular town budget season.
Correct.
Yeah,
Correct.
okay.
It's just the $23,000 that we spend on harbor master fees, consulting fees, Betty's fees, and postage, essentially, and copies.
Understood.
Okay, great, Sam. Thank you. I will get that to you. The last item under old business is Aquarian. I don't know how much.
I can talk briefly about this.
Okay.
This is another part of the commission's responsibilities. The state statute talks about the commission's authority and the town code to review proposals. This isn't the precise language, but affecting Southport Harbor. So that means proposals outside of the actual harbor could affect the harbor or are subject to review. And a good example is the Exide battery matter and remediation, which the commission had a very important role in. But recently, well, I say last year, but it's still this year. The Aquarian Water Company applied for a DEEP permit to, as the chair said, to divert water from the Hemlocks Reservoir system to southwest Connecticut. And the Hemlocks Reservoir drains through Cricker Brook to the Mill River, and the Mill River drains down to Southport Harbor. So there's a substantial amount of water that the utility was proposing to divert. And I guess when the reservoirs were built, they were primarily to serve the industries in Bridgeport, and now the demand is in southwest Connecticut. In any case, the commission, the Conservation Commission in town, appealed the decision, felt that it was too much water being diverted, and the utility hadn't properly evaluated the downstream impacts. And in effect, they were appealing, and they requested a public hearing, and then appealed, that's not quite the legal term, but took exception to the hearing officer's decision, and they were joined in that objection by the Mill River Wetland Committee, the Fair Plan Group, Fairfielders for Land and Water Resources, I forget, and another group. And and the Harbor Commission had written comments and recommendations on this. In support of the Conservation Commission and these other, felt more information was needed. And it's interesting that the way that the utility company's proposals are regulated. The burden of proof on determining whether there's an adverse impact is not with the utility company, but with anybody who happens to take objection to it. So the Conservation and Mill River Wetlands, they felt that there was that the utility should provide more information on the potential impacts. The utility said, we don't have to because there aren't any. And there aren't any because we say so. But anyway, there was an agreement reached just before to settle that appeal. And according to, Mr. Bishop's not here now, but the Mill River Wetland Group, it was a satisfactory agreement because the utility agreed to fund, as Tim said, the replacement of the downstream gauge to determine how much water is in the Cricker Brook downstream of the reservoir. They agreed to maintain an agreement between the town and, it wasn't Aquarian then, it was Bridgeport Hydraulic in 2007, which talked about them releasing water from other parts of the reservoir into the reservoir system into the Mill River. And it also talks about, after 15 years, reassessing what the impacts might be. So I think this was considered a beneficial agreement, short of going to court over the proposed diversion, and it's consistent with what the Harbor Commission had written. So anyway, I thought that that's another part of the work of the commission.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. One of our suggestions was that the permit not be for 25 years, but be for a shorter period of time. So if they have to reassess after 15, that's wonderful.
They have to reassess it after 15.
That's great. That's terrific. Any questions about the Aquarian matter for Jeff? Okay, moving right along then. Sam and Eric, nominating committee report.
All right. Eric, why don't you proceed?
All right, Madam Chairwoman, the nominating committee report, myself and Sam Cargill were the nominating committee, and we recommend the following slate of officers for 2022: Kim Taylor, Chairwoman; Jack Hirschler, Vice Chairman; Sam Cargill, Secretary.
Excellent. Thank you for your work.
Thank you, and thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Eric. So, do I have a motion to accept the work of the nominating committee?
I'll make the motion.
Bill moved.
I would second it.
Don second. Is there any discussion? Hearing no discussion, can we have a vote on to accept the nominating committee's slate, which would be Kim Taylor Chair, Jack Hirschler Vice Chair, and Sam Cargill Secretary.
Kim, I just want to make sure that there are no alternates making motions and voting.
We have no alternates present this evening. Thank you, Betty.
Thank you.
So, all
in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Then we have the nominating committee slate is unanimously accepted. Thank you, everyone, for voting. Thank you, Eric and Sam, for making the calls and doing the legwork. Is there any other new business anybody wants to bring before the commission this evening? Is there anybody from the public who would like to make any additional comments?
Thanks for the privilege of participating, Madam Chairman, and congratulations. Thank you for your service.
Thank you, Pat Carroll from Henderson Road. Just be sure that everyone understands who it is that's responded, this member of the public. We really appreciate your input. Hearing no further comment, no new business, can I have a motion to adjourn? Jack moves. Bill seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Everyone, just a reminder, our next meeting, January 18, all meetings in 2022 are at 4:30, not 4:45. So we voted to make it 4:30 for 2022. January 18 will be in the first floor conference room. That will be noted on the agenda, 4:30. Have a good holiday, safe holiday, and look forward to seeing you all, or at least hearing from you all in the new year. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.